Evaluating expressions review. Love Mary and Isaac and Quentin and Mom and Dad and my whole family.
Evaluating expressions is a matter of substituting and solving using order of operations. A famous kind of line for this that math teachers use is plug and chug. You plug in the numbers and then you chug it out. So for the first expression, 3f minus g, we are using the values f is equal to 8, g is equal to 4, and h is equal to negative 2. So I am going to simply substitute my variables for the given values. So f is 8, 3 next to f I know means multiply. So I'm going to show that with parentheses, because if I don't write any multiplication symbol in there, it looks like the number 38. So then for g, I am going to substitute the value 4. Now this is just a simple order of operations problem. I multiply before I subtract. 3 times 8 is equal to 24 minus 4. I subtract and get my final answer of 20. My second expression is h times the quantity f plus g. Again, I am simply going to substitute my values. So I have negative 2 in for h, f is 8, and g is 4. And once I've plugged those in, I solve according to order of operations. This time I need to do parentheses first. So 8 plus 4 is 12. And negative 2 next to those parentheses means multiply. So negative 2 times 12. 2 times 12 is 24. There is one negative, so my final answer is negative 24. And the last expression on this page is FGH. That is multiplying all three of those together. So that means 8, and I'm going to use a dot this time just so you get used to seeing different ways of showing multiplication. So I have 8 times 4 for G times negative 2 for H. I'm going to multiply. 8 times 4 is 32. 32 times 2 is 64. I go back and check my negatives. There is 1. So my answer is negative 64. We have 3 more expressions, but if you notice, our values now include whole numbers, integers, decimals, fractions. It includes all of those rational numbers, and I'm going to show you how to plug those in and solve them. The first expression we have is FH minus D. So that means F times H. F is 8, H is negative 4, and D is 0.25. I need to multiply first. That is negative 32 minus 0.25. Whenever I'm working with integers, I don't really like to do subtraction, so I am going to change that to adding the opposite. Then, if you look, I have a negative plus a negative right here. When I add the same sign, I simply add my numbers. So I'm going to add 32 and 0.25. So 32 plus 0.25, you always line up your decimals. You can add zeros in if you want, but that is equal to 32.25. That's my answer, adding them up. I add them and keep the sign. So 32.25 with a negative sign. I am going to go ahead and erase this. Go ahead and rewind the video if you need to go back and look at this one, but I need a little bit more space to do the other problem. So I can probably just add a negative on here. There's my final answer. My second expression is G minus F plus D. If I plug in those numbers, I get negative 4 minus F, which is 8, plus D, which is 0.25. I need to work left to right because I'm working with addition and subtraction. Negative 4 minus 8, I'm going to change it to adding a negative. Since you are adding the same signs, I have negative and negative. I'm going to add those two numbers, 4 and 8. 4 plus 8 is 12. And I keep my sign, which is negative. Then I drop down my plus 2, 5. Then I look and see this one is negative, this one is positive. When I put positives and negatives together, I actually subtract. So this time I have to do 12 minus 0.25. And on the number 12, the decimal would come after. And I am subtracting, so I'm going to drop my decimal right where it needs to be. And then I need to borrow. 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 2 is 7. And then 1 minus 0 and 1 minus nothing. So I did my subtraction, and then I go back and look. My biggest number, absolute value, was 12, and that's negative. So my final answer is going to be negative 11.75. And my final expression is g plus the absolute value of g minus h. So g is negative 4 plus the absolute value of negative 4 minus 1/2. You need to do absolute value first, and if you look, you are subtracting with negatives, so I would strongly suggest changing it to adding the opposite, or negative 4 plus negative 1/2. You're adding like signs, so you want to add those numbers together. 4 plus 1/2 is 4.5. So 4.5, you keep the sign, which is negative. I'm going to drop down the negative 4. The absolute value of negative 4.5 is 4.5, because absolute value is always positive. So then look, now you're adding opposites. You have a negative 4 and a positive 4.5. Whenever you put positives together, you subtract. Well, 4.5 minus 4 is 1/2. I'm going to write it up at the top. 4.5 is bigger than 4, so my final answer is positive. Good luck with your formative tomorrow.